You're not addicted to narcissists. You're addicted to the version of love that trauma taught you to crave. That intensity, that mystery, that magnetic pull, it's not chemistry. It's danger disguised as desire. And you keep rushing toward it again and again, calling it fate, when it's really just a pattern begging to be broken. No one wakes up and says, "Today I'll fall for someone who will manipulate me, confuse me, and drain me." But it happens because your standards were never built to protect you. They were built to recreate something that once felt like home, even if that home was full of emotional landmines. That's the trap of unresolved pain. It doesn't just haunt you, it chooses for you. The Stoics would call this a failure of judgment. Not a moral failure, but a failure to recognize what is and isn't worthy of your time, attention, and affection. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts about love are shaped by abandonment, rejection, or chaos, your standards will reflect that, no matter how intelligent, successful, or self-aware you think you are. This video isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding why you keep ending up in relationships where you give too much, love too fast, and lose yourself in the process. The answer isn't that you're weak. It's that no one ever taught you to define love through peace instead of pursuit. You set the wrong standards. You rushed in for all the wrong reasons. Now we fix it. This is Victory Stoic, where healing isn't soft and clarity is everything. If this hits something raw, like this video, share it with someone who needs to stop choosing pain, and subscribe so you don't miss the truths that make you unshakable. In the comments, leave either your story or your command. Say something that reclaims your path, something like, "I choose peace over intensity," or "This time, I pick me," with clarity. Thank you for listening. Let's begin. Number 1. You mistake emotional intensity for compatibility. They made your heart race. The way they looked at you, touched your hand, told you you were different. Something about it all felt electric. You couldn't stop thinking about them. You hung on every message. Every reply from them had the power to lift or ruin your entire day. It felt like fate. It felt like a connection no one else could understand. But it wasn't fate. It was adrenaline. And what you called chemistry was really your nervous system going into overdrive. We've been trained to believe that strong emotions mean strong love. That if it doesn't feel overwhelming, it's not real. That butterflies in your stomach are a sign you found someone special. But butterflies are not a sign of safety. They're often a sign of anxiety. And intensity, especially at the start, is not the same as compatibility. In fact, it can be the exact opposite. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. When someone triggers excitement, unpredictability, or even stress, your body releases a cocktail of chemicals: dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin. It mimics the feeling of being high. This is why relationships with narcissists feel addictive. According to Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist at Rutgers, early romantic attraction activates the same brain pathways as cocaine. You're not falling in love, you're getting hooked. This emotional spike is often mistaken for soulmate energy. But if you take a step back, you'll realize something crucial. The people who made you feel the most obsessed are rarely the ones who made you feel the most at peace. The Stoics understood this difference. Epictetus warned, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings, then you will forget your anger." In the same way, when you are overwhelmed by someone's energy, you must ask yourself, what inside me is confusing excitement with safety? Let's look at Hannah, 35, from Arizona. She met someone at a networking event, confident, sharp, charming. They talked all night. Within a week, he was calling her his soulmate. Within 2, he wanted exclusivity. It felt incredible, fast, effortless, consuming. But 3 months in, she was crying almost weekly. He was hot and cold, overly affectionate, then distant. She kept chasing the high of the first 2 weeks, hoping it would come back. It never did. Because that wasn't love. It was a dopamine spike dressed up as destiny. Real compatibility doesn't make you lose sleep, it helps you sleep better. It doesn't hijack your nervous system, it calms it. If someone makes you feel constantly anxious, on edge, or unsure, that's not chemistry, it's dysregulation. And no matter how intense the pull feels, it's not a sign that they're your person. It's often a sign that something unresolved in you is being activated. Abandonment issues, low self-worth, a need to prove you're lovable. Here's how to begin separating intensity from compatibility. First, track your nervous system. After each interaction with someone new, rate yourself 1 to 10. How calm do you feel? How grounded? Are you thinking clearly or obsessively? This builds awareness. Because if you constantly feel unstable around someone, that's not magic. That's your body saying something's off. Second, do the friend test. Ask yourself, if this person treated my best friend the way they're treating me, would I think it's romantic? Or would I think it's manipulation? If your answer only makes sense because you feel it, but wouldn't accept it for someone else, you're caught in a chemical trap. Third, slow everything down. Narcissists and emotionally unstable people push for fast intensity because they know it bypasses your logic. So you do the opposite. You slow the pace. You question everything. You watch what they do over time. Love that's real will not collapse under your boundaries. If you need to say, I'd like to get to know each other over time, and they disappear, that's not a loss. That's a save. Marcus Aurelius said, the nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Calm is the benchmark. Not butterflies, not adrenaline, not fantasy. When you feel seen, not just desired. Safe, not just stimulated. That's when you know you're standing in the presence of something real. The people who rush in and consume your every thought aren't necessarily the ones who care most. They're often the ones who want to dominate your inner world before you can realize they don't belong in it. The ones worth keeping won't need to overwhelm you to earn your love. You don't need to chase fire to feel alive. You need to stop confusing chaos with connection. And you need to remember that compatibility is not found in how loud the beginning is, but in how safe, consistent, and honest the middle becomes. Let go of the myth that love must hurt to be real, and start choosing the kind of quiet strength that doesn't ignite panic, but peace. Number 2, you're attracted to confidence, but it's an illusion built on control. They walk into the room like they own it. Sharp suit, direct eye contact, perfect timing with every word. You tell yourself they're different. They carry power, ambition, self-belief. You feel drawn to it, not just impressed, but activated. You don't just want to be with them, you want to be them. But what you see isn't confidence, it's performance. What you admire as strength is often nothing more than control in disguise. Narcissists are masters of artificial presence. They curate their image with precision. They mirror what you admire. They drop names, flash credentials, make you feel like they chose you out of everyone else. You don't fall in love with them. You fall in love with the version of yourself they reflect back. And when they sense your admiration, they tighten the strings. You confuse control for charisma. And by the time you realize the difference, they already own the stage, and you're no longer writing your lines. Epictetus warned, appearances are of 4 kinds. Things are either as they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are and do not appear to be, or they are not and yet appear to be. Rightly to aim in all these cases is the wise man's task. The narcissist lives in that last category. They are not who they appear to be, but they've perfected the appearance. And if you can't discern that gap, you'll mistake their armor for authenticity. Take Greg, 42, from Michigan. He met a woman at a leadership retreat. Polished, confident, effortlessly charming. She told stories about high-level consulting work, used buzzwords like vision, alignment, impact. Within weeks, she was giving him advice about his business, suggesting how he could level up, even pointing out weaknesses in his mindset. Greg, a driven entrepreneur, found her intoxicating until her tone shifted. If he disagreed, she'd call him insecure. If he questioned her, she'd accuse him of being intimidated. What he thought was support turned out to be subtle domination. It wasn't partnership, it was performance backed by control. This is the narcissist's trick. They wear confidence like armor, but underneath is a fragile self that can't tolerate uncertainty or shared power. True confidence creates space. It invites others in. But narcissistic confidence consumes the room. It needs to be the smartest, the most desired, the most admired. And when you start to shine too brightly, they'll dim you, not with cruelty, but with comparison, with backhanded praise, with moments that make you question if you're the one overstepping. Here's the psychological truth. Narcissists project dominance to protect vulnerability they haven't dealt with. Their self-worth depends on being perceived as superior. According to research published in Personality and Social Psychology Review, narcissistic individuals score high in self-reported confidence, but low in emotional stability and empathy. They look strong, but their foundation is hollow. And that's why they're obsessed with control. Without it, they fear being exposed. So what can you do? First, learn the difference between confidence and coercion. Confidence respects your thoughts, even when they differ. Coercion frames disagreement as disloyalty. If you feel like you can't challenge someone without emotional consequences, you're not in the presence of strength. You're under pressure. Second, apply the quiet test. Truly confident people don't need constant affirmation. Try going a full day without praising them or feeding their ego. Do they become uneasy, withdrawn, passive-aggressive? If so, what you're seeing isn't confidence. It's dependency on control via praise. Third, use the spotlight reversal. Shift the focus. Talk about your values, your boundaries, your vision for the future. Do they engage with curiosity or redirect the topic back to themselves? Narcissists aren't interested in mutual elevation. They want the conversation and the relationship centered around their narrative. Here's an image for this. Imagine a lighthouse. Real confidence is like that. It stands strong, emits light, helps others find direction. It doesn't chase ships. It doesn't demand attention. Just is. Narcissistic confidence is like a disco ball, loud, spinning, always needing a spotlight. It's captivating in short bursts, but ultimately exhausting and hollow. Marcus Aurelius said, "Never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect, to hate any man, to suspect, to curse, to act the hypocrite." A narcissist's false strength will often demand that you bend your integrity to stay close. The more you value their image, the more you risk losing your own. If you've been caught in this before, don't shame yourself. You weren't weak. You were misled by a performance designed to manipulate your attention. But now you see it. Now you know. Real strength doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't weaponize praise. It doesn't use charisma to control. So the next time you feel drawn to someone who commands the room, ask, are they inviting me in or pulling me under? The line between admiration and submission is thin. Learn to feel when it's being crossed, and when it is, walk before the spotlight blinds you from seeing who they really are. Number 3. You think drama is love, but it's just emotional addiction, dressed as romance. They hurt you. You cried, they vanished. And then, just when you were ready to walk away, they came back. Soft, sorry, with just enough sincerity in their voice to make you question everything. You forgave them. Again, because the apology felt powerful. The pain felt meaningful. You confused emotional chaos with depth. You mistook the sharp twists in your stomach for passion. But that's not love. That's programming. That's emotional addiction forged in trauma, not truth. You grew up with distorted blueprints. Maybe you saw inconsistency modeled as affection. Maybe one parent pulled you close, then pushed you away. Maybe love, to you, never felt steady, only earned. So now, as an adult, you crave what's familiar. High highs, low lows, walking on edge, then being swept off your feet. Calm feels boring. Predictability feels empty. But real love isn't meant to spike your nervous system. It's meant to soothe it. According to trauma experts like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, people who grow up in unstable emotional environments often develop trauma bonds. These are attachments formed not through safety, but through intermittent reinforcement. When someone hurts you, then rewards you, your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, the same chemicals linked to romantic attachment. You start associating pain relief with not peace, not respect, just relief. And that's how you become addicted to the cycle. Let's look at Mia, 34, from Seattle. Her ex would go cold for days, ignore her messages, then reappear with flowers and an apology. Every time, she took him back. Not because she believed his words, but because the emotional drop and recovery made her feel alive. She called it passion. But in therapy, she realized it was the only version of love she knew, survival disguised as intimacy. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When your emotions are hijacked by another person's inconsistency, you are not free, you are enslaved. And every time you call that emotional roller coaster love, you deepen the chains. So what can you do? First, you have to detox from drama. That means no more romanticizing chaos, no more interpreting pain as proof of passion. Write down 3 relationships, romantic or not, where love felt volatile. Then ask, did those relationships actually make me stronger, calmer, or did they simply mirror my past wounds? Be honest. Second, track your body. When you feel that heart-pounding rush around someone new, pause. Ask yourself, is this excitement, or is it anxiety I'm mislabeling as chemistry? Do they make you feel safe, or do they make you feel wanted in a way that feels impossible to hold on to? Third, practice boring intimacy. Start connecting with people who feel calm, who respond predictably, who don't disappear when things get real. It will feel flat at first. That's the withdrawal. You're not bored, you're healing. Here's a metaphor. You've been drinking salt water your whole life, thinking it was quenching your thirst. It burns going down, but you're used to it. Now someone offers you clean water, steady, gentle, nourishing, and it tastes bland, not because it is, but because your system is used to the sting. Stop chasing the burn. Learn to crave what actually sustains you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Let's add, if it's not peace, it's not love. You've learned to call instability romantic. You've been taught that true love must include struggle. That breaking up and getting back together makes it stronger. That emotional devastation is somehow proof of how deeply you feel. But depth doesn't require destruction. Here's a practical habit. Each time someone hurts you and then apologizes, measure the gap between their words and their behavior. If the apology comes with no sustained change, it's not love, it's reset. And resets are the drug narcissists use to keep you emotionally hooked. Also, write your own definition of love. Not the one you inherited from your parents, not the one movies fed you, yours. Define it by what it should feel like: stable, mutual, clear, consistent, honest. Then use it like a compass. Every time you feel drawn to someone, ask, do they align with this? Or am I chasing the drama I once mistook for desire? You are not unlovable because you crave chaos. You were just conditioned to believe love had to hurt to matter. That if it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't real. But now you know better. And you have the power to rewrite the story. The next time someone pulls you in with that intoxicating edge, step back. Ask, is this love, or is this just the pain I've been trained to chase? You can still want intensity, but let it come from truth, not turbulence. You don't need another dramatic love story. You need a quiet, steady revolution back to yourself. Number 4. You choose people you have to work to be loved by because deep down, you don't believe you deserve love freely. You chase people who make you prove yourself, who pull away when you open up, who love you harder when you're silent but disappear when you ask for more. You think this is just how love works, like you have to earn it, survive it, mold yourself into something more acceptable to deserve it. But here's the brutal truth. You don't believe you're worthy of unconditional love. That's why you chase it. That's why you tolerate people who make you audition for affection. It didn't start with them. It started when love was first modeled to you as something inconsistent. Maybe as a child, you had to earn approval by being useful, quiet, impressive. Maybe you were only praised when you achieved something. Maybe when you showed need, it was met with withdrawal or guilt. So now, as an adult, the love you recognize feels more like labor than connection. And someone who gives love easily, you don't trust it. You don't feel chemistry, you feel suspicion. According to attachment theory, this is classic anxious attachment. Your nervous system is wired to chase closeness, but only when it feels just out of reach. If someone is emotionally available, your subconscious sees it as less valuable. The prize is the person who's hard to reach, hard to please, hard to keep. And you convince yourself that the more you struggle to win them, the more meaningful it will be when they finally love you back. But they don't. Not really. And that chase becomes your identity. Stoicism would call this enslavement. Epictetus wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Love that depends on your performance is not love. It's dependency wrapped in fear. When you constantly chase someone's approval, you're not in a relationship. You're in a psychological contract where your value must be proven daily. Let's look at Evan, 40, from Illinois. He dated a woman who was brilliant, successful, emotionally distant, Every time he tried to get closer, she'd pull back. She rarely expressed affection, never initiated contact, always made him feel like he was too needy. And yet, he adored her. Not because she met his needs, but because every small sign of warmth felt like a reward. Like he'd won. It wasn't until his therapist asked him, "Do you love her? Or do you love who you become when she gives you crumbs?" that he started to see the difference. Here's the thing. Love isn't a reward. It's not a finish line you cross after proving your worth. It's not something withheld until you become smaller, nicer, more perfect. Real love doesn't need you to perform. It needs you to be present. If someone only loves the version of you that stays quiet, compliant, impressive, they don't love you. They love control, or image, or convenience. So how do you break the pattern? Start with radical self-questioning. Ask, who was the first person that made me feel like I had to earn love? When did I first believe I was too much or not enough? Write it down, give it a name, because until you trace the origin, you'll keep recreating it. Next, list the traits of people you've been most drawn to. Now look at that list. Do these traits include mysterious, hard to read, challenges me, keeps me chasing? Be honest, that's not chemistry. That's familiar pain, familiar struggle, familiar rejection dressed up as attraction. Then, practice low-effort intimacy. Spend time with someone who doesn't make you earn their attention. Someone who texts first, who checks in, who listens. You'll feel uneasy at first. You might even feel bored. That's the withdrawal. You're not used to love without effort. But that's the practice. That's how you teach your nervous system to stop chasing and start receiving. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." You don't control who hurt you before, but you control who you choose now. You control whether you keep chasing people who withhold love like a prize, or whether you begin choosing those who offer it with presence, not pressure. Here's a metaphor. Imagine a child reaching for a parent who always takes a step back. The child keeps reaching, thinking, if I just try harder, maybe this time they'll hold me. That child is still alive in you, still chasing, still reaching. But you're not a child anymore. You don't have to beg. You get to choose. And the first choice is to stop running toward people who walk away when you speak your truth. Your worth isn't in how hard you try to be loved. It's in how deeply you accept that you don't have to try at all. So the next time you feel that pull toward someone who makes you work for their affection, ask, am I in love? Or am I just addicted to earning love I never believed I deserved? Then pause. And choose differently. For once, choose the path that doesn't hurt to walk. Number 5. You romanticize coldness as a challenge, but it's just disinterest in disguise. They're quiet, hard to read, mysterious. They text back late, if at all. They rarely share how they feel, and when they do, it's vague. Just enough to keep you curious, but never enough to feel seen. And somehow, all of this makes you want them more. You tell yourself they're deep, intense, emotionally complex. You say things like, they're just not good at expressing themselves, or they've been through a lot. You turn their emotional distance into a puzzle. And the moment you do that, you stop being their equal and become a seeker, chasing validation from someone who never signed up to give it. But here's what you won't admit. You're not attracted to mystery. You're attracted to what you don't feel you're allowed to have. You confuse detachment with depth. And you mistake silence for substance. Not because it's real, but because it lets you project what you want onto someone who's never actually showed you who they are. This is a common trap, especially for people who equate love with effort. If someone is available, responsive, open, you feel nothing. But when they're cold, distant, and hard to impress, it activates something in you. A need to earn, to win, to crack the code. But you're not cracking a code. You're rationalizing their lack of effort so you don't have to face what it really is. They're not invested. Stoic philosophy doesn't reward fantasy. It demands perception. Epictetus said, first learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. That applies here too. Before you say, they're just emotionally guarded, ask yourself, have they actually earned that label? Or have you made them interesting because you're afraid of facing the truth? That they're just emotionally unavailable and possibly uninterested. Let's look at Jacob, 38, from Colorado. He met a woman at a photography class. She was stunning, aloof, didn't say much, and often seemed distracted when he spoke. When she did speak, it was poetic but cryptic. Jacob became obsessed. He thought, she's deep. She just needs someone patient enough to pull her out. So he tried harder, bought books she liked, took her on thoughtful dates, even learned some of her hobbies. Her responses? A polite thank you, occasionally a kiss, but never real engagement. Eventually she ghosted. No explanation, just gone. And what hurt most wasn't the loss, it was the realization that he had filled in all the blanks she never asked him to fill. Here's what's really happening. You're doing all the emotional labor while they stay emotionally passive. You're imagining stories where there's only silence. And silence isn't deep, it's empty. In psychology, this is called projective idealization. It's when we take limited information about someone and build an entire personality around them, usually based on our unmet needs. We want them to be special, so we give them qualities they never showed us. We turn vagueness into mystery. But mystery, when unearned, is just avoidance. So what can you do? Start by practicing reality anchoring. This means asking, what have they actually done or said that shows emotional depth? Not what you think they mean, not what you hope they feel, just the data. If all you have is a few poetic lines and moody glances, you're building your desire on a ghost. Second, use the reciprocity check. For every question you answer about yourself, do they match it with their own openness? Do they ask thoughtful questions back? Do they initiate, follow up, show interest beyond surface flattery? If not, you're not in a conversation. You're in a performance, and you're the only one showing up. Third, set an internal clarity rule. If after 4 meaningful interactions, you still don't know what this person values, wants, or feels, step back. Not because they're bad, but because you're investing in potential, not partnership. Marcus Aurelius said, the value of a man should be seen in what he gives and not in what he is able to receive. In the context of love, if someone gives you nothing but charm and silence, and you're giving your time, energy, and hope, they are not your match. They are your mirror, reflecting back the parts of you that still believe you have to earn attention by guessing. Here's a metaphor. Imagine standing outside a locked door, knocking softly, bringing flowers, writing poems, assuming someone's inside because the light flickered once. But what if the house is empty? What if the flicker was just an illusion, a habit, not an invitation? You're not romantic for trying harder. You're not loyal for being patient. You're just delaying the truth. And the truth is, not everyone is meant to open up to you. Not everyone is deep. And not everyone cold is worth warming up. So the next time you feel drawn to someone distant, ask, am I attracted to them or to the story I'm creating to explain their silence? Then choose again, not based on potential, but on presence. Number 6, you've never clearly defined what a healthy relationship is, so you settle for what feels familiar, not what feels right. You say you want love, but what you really want is relief. From loneliness, from craving, from silence, from your own unmet needs. You don't choose people based on values or alignment or emotional safety. You choose based on chemistry, attraction, physical response, and worst of all, urgency. You want someone now. Someone to stop the ache. Someone to be there. And when the ache is loud enough, anything will do. This is how you end up calling lust connection. How you confuse sexual energy with intimacy. How you chase beauty instead of goodness. You don't know what a healthy relationship looks like because you've never sat down and defined it. You think you're seeking a soulmate, but you're really just trying to avoid solitude. And in doing so, you accept the first person who gives you a fraction of what you crave, even if they give you none of what you need. Stoicism doesn't just ask you to master your thoughts. It asks you to know your values. Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. You're not suffering because they left. You're suffering because you overestimated what it was, because your standard was built on craving, not clarity. Let's look at Ben, 37, from San Diego. He always said he wanted a real relationship, but when asked what that meant, he couldn't answer. He chased women who were physically stunning, emotionally elusive, and constantly on the edge of chaos. He said things like, she's hot, she's intense, she keeps me on my toes. But he never asked, is she kind? Is she stable? Does she want the same life I want? He confused excitement with compatibility. Every breakup devastated him, not because he lost something deep, but because he was alone again. Not in love, just addicted to company. Here's the truth most people avoid. If you don't define what love means to you, your body will choose for you. And your body, especially if it's wired by trauma or desperation, will pick what's familiar, not what's good. You'll chase the rush, not the root. You'll sleep with people who stimulate your nervous system, but drain your soul, and then wonder why you feel empty after every climax. A healthy relationship is not built on how often they text you back, how attractive they are, how intense the sex is. It's built on shared values, on emotional availability, on consistency, on mutual effort. It's slow, clear, sometimes even boring, but it brings peace, not anxiety. And until you name what peace looks like, you'll keep picking chaos and calling it fate. So what can you do? First, define your standards in writing. Sit down and answer. What does a healthy relationship look like for me? Be specific. Not someone who loves me, but someone who listens when I speak, keeps their word, shows up emotionally, shares my core values, supports my growth. If you can't name it, you won't recognize it. And if you won't recognize it, you'll settle for anything that mimics it briefly. Second, separate physical craving from emotional truth. Just because you're sexually drawn to someone doesn't mean they're good for you. Just because someone's attention lights you up doesn't mean they respect you. Write a red flag versus green flag list. Track how often you choose red and excuse it because they're hot or fun. Remind yourself, good looks don't build safe love, discipline does. Third, practice chosen solitude. If you're constantly filling your life with half-loves just to avoid silence, you'll never learn what it feels like to be whole without external validation. Take 30 days. No dating, no late-night texts, no situationships, just you. Get uncomfortable, get honest. Let the stillness show you what you've been running from, because that's where your standards begin. Not when someone appears, but when you finally stop running. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Stop wasting your time on people you would have rejected if you weren't so afraid of being alone. Start acting like your life is worth sharing with someone who's actually capable of honoring it. Here's a metaphor. You've been starving, so every person who hands you a crumb feels like a feast. But you were never meant to survive on scraps. You were meant to build the table. Set your standards. Choose who gets a seat, and don't apologize for expecting full nourishment, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, physical. So the next time someone makes you feel just better than nothing, ask, am I letting my loneliness choose again? Am I calling this connection just because it fills a gap? And then ask the better question, what do I actually need? Not to feel good tonight, but to be free for the rest of my life. You've craved love. Now it's time to define it. Only then will you recognize it. Only then will you stop mistaking the ache for the answer. Number 7, you set your standards based on appearance, status, or charisma, and forgot to ask the one question that matters. They looked the part, attractive, confident, well-dressed, maybe successful, maybe admired. They had that intangible energy, that pull, that made you feel lucky just to be near them. You told your friends, this one's different. You felt chosen, elevated, seen. But what you didn't ask, what you forgot to even consider, was, do they treat me with respect? Do they make me feel safe? Do they actually show up when it matters? You didn't evaluate them as a partner. You admired them like a product. You fixated on the packaging and missed the contents. And now here you are, trying to figure out why someone so impressive makes you feel so small. It's easy to be fooled by surface. We live in a culture that conditions us to equate image with value. A sharp jawline means confidence. A luxury watch means success. A following online means importance. And charisma? That's practically currency. You were taught to aim for what looks impressive, not what feels healthy. But Stoicism doesn't care about status. It cares about substance. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In love, the same rule applies. Don't fall for someone's reputation. Watch their rhythm. Don't chase their charm. Track their consistency. Let's talk about Michelle, 36, from Atlanta. She met a man who ran a startup, had a magnetic presence, and seemed deeply intellectual. He quoted philosophers, took her to elegant places, spoke passionately about art and politics. She was hooked. But when it came to emotional presence, he was a ghost. Hot one day, gone the next. Conversations about the future were met with vague answers. He never asked how she was really doing, but every time she doubted the connection, she remembered his status, his brilliance, his potential. She was falling in love with what he represented, not who he was. Here's the psychological layer. We often attach to symbols when we feel uncertain about our own identity. We date people who make us feel more complete by association. If we're not confident internally, we try to level up externally. It's not love. It's status seeking, dressed up as desire. So how do you stop this? First, ask real questions early, not what do you do, or where have you traveled? Ask, what does commitment mean to you? How do you handle conflict? What's your relationship with consistency? Then listen, not to how poetic their answers are, but to whether their actions ever reflect what they say. Second, run the mirror test. After every interaction, ask yourself, do I feel more clear or more confused, more grounded or more anxious? True connection brings clarity, not chaos, not doubt. If someone leaves you mentally spiraling, but you keep chasing because they're so amazing, stop. You're reacting to their performance, not their partnership. Third, shift your standards from aesthetic to emotional durability. Create a 3-point checklist that includes 1. Respect in how they speak to you. 2. Consistency in how they show up. 3. Investment in how they know you. If they fail on any of those 3, their looks, career, or charm won't matter, because none of those things can build trust. Here's a metaphor. Imagine you're shopping for a home. One is stunning, sleek glass, modern design, high ceilings, but the foundation has cracks. Plumbing is unreliable, no insulation. Another house is quieter, simpler, but it's solid, weatherproof, peaceful. The first is impressive. The second is livable. You don't need a love that looks good in pictures. You need one that shelters your soul. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In love, craving image over integrity is spiritual poverty. You're not hungry for love, you're starving for validation. And that craving will keep you chasing people who treat you like a prop in their performance. So the next time you feel drawn to someone's success, appearance, or energy, pause. Ask, what do they give me beyond excitement? Are they consistent when I'm not performing? Are they kind when I'm vulnerable? Can I be ordinary around them and still feel valued? And if the answer is no, walk away, because your heart is not a trophy, it's a home. And not everyone who looks like they belong on the cover of your life deserves a key to the inside. Number 8, you judge people by their words, not their actions. They told you they loved you early. They said they'd never hurt you. They spoke about integrity, loyalty, real connection. They told stories about their values, about how they were different from your past. They knew the right things to say, when to say them, how to say them, and in exactly the tone that disarmed you. And you listened, you believed, you wanted it to be true. So you took their words as proof and ignored what came after. This is where many people get trapped. You confuse verbal fluency with emotional truth. Someone who can articulate love doesn't necessarily know how to give it. Someone who talks about growth may not be growing. Someone who calls themselves self-aware can still be a master manipulator. Narcissists especially thrive here. They study what you want, what you're afraid of, what you lacked in your past, and then they echo it back to you in perfect packaging. You fall for the speech, not the substance. The Stoics never put trust in language alone. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Real character isn't spoken, it's demonstrated, especially when no one's watching, and especially when it's inconvenient. Let's look at Tom, 41, from Austin. He met someone who said all the right things. She talked about emotional maturity, healing from the past, building a future together. She even quoted therapy language, emotional safety, boundaries, secure attachment. But whenever Tom brought up an issue, she got defensive, dismissive, sometimes cold. She'd say, "I hear you," but nothing changed. After 6 months, he realized he wasn't in a relationship, he was in a podcast. One that sounded smart but didn't live by a single principle it preached. Here's the psychological truth. Humans are wired to respond to certainty. Words that sound clear, confident, and emotionally resonant light up the reward centers in the brain. According to Dr. Paul Zak, oxytocin, the bonding chemical, is released even during simple storytelling. This means that someone can trigger your attachment reflex simply by speaking with enough emotional clarity, even if they never follow through. That's why your standards can't stop at articulation. They must demand evidence, and evidence comes from consistency over time. Anyone can show up strong for a week. Anyone can mirror your desires for a month. But who are they when the emotion fades? When it's hard, when it's boring, that's where truth lives. So how do you shift? First, implement the 30-day audit. Instead of getting swept up in what someone says, track what they do for the first month. Do they follow through on plans? Do they listen without turning it into a lecture? Do their habits match the values they claim? If not, their words are theater, and you're the audience. Second, set up the watch and wait rule. When someone says something powerful, "I'd never hurt you, I want something real, I'm all in," don't react. Don't rush to reciprocate, just say "let's see," not out loud, to yourself. Give it time, watch what they build, because love, like Stoicism, is not declared, it is lived. Third, practice stillness before response. If someone's words ignite something in you, hope, desire, comfort, pause. Write the words down, then ask, how do I feel when I watch their behavior, not when I listen to their pitch? That one question can save you months or years of giving your heart to an illusion. Here's a metaphor. Imagine buying a house based on the listing description. Spacious, warm, stable, beautifully renovated. You fall in love with the idea, you sign early, but you never check the plumbing, the foundation, the neighborhood, and a few months in, things start to crack. Not because the house changed, but because you bought into language, not structure. Relationships work the same way. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Stop arguing with yourself about what someone could be. Watch what they are. Don't wait for them to prove your hope right. Let their behavior speak, and trust it the first time. So next time someone says what you've always wanted to hear, take a breath. Then ask yourself, what do their actions say when they think I'm not listening? Do they move with care? Or just speak with skill? The ones worth your love won't just say they value you. They'll show it. In the quiet moments, in the follow-through, in the days when saying nothing matters more than any grand declaration. Words are cheap, attention is rented, but behavior is owned. And you're only as safe as what someone owns when no one's looking. Number 9. You don't check if their values align with yours, because you're too focused on short-term emotion, not long-term direction. They made you feel seen, desired, alive. In the first few weeks, everything clicked. The conversations flowed. The attraction was magnetic. The need to be close was overwhelming. But now, it's unraveling. The fights are confusing, the misalignment obvious. You want one thing, they want another. You believe in communication, they shut down. You want a future, they want a vibe. And still, you're trying to make it work. Not because you're blind, but because you're emotionally invested in someone who was never compatible to begin with. Here's the problem. You never asked the hard questions. You never stopped to ask, do we want the same kind of life? Do we handle conflict in similar ways? Do we share emotional values, family expectations, purpose? You assumed chemistry would fill in the gaps, but chemistry without alignment is just fire with no direction. It burns hot, then leaves ash. The Stoics would call this a failure of forethought. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. In love, that means first know the kind of relationship that matches your truth, then only allow in those who reflect it. But most people don't do this. Why? Because they're not choosing from clarity. They're choosing from need. When you don't know how to be alone, when your self-love is inconsistent, when your body is screaming for affection, your standards collapse. You just want someone to answer the ache. And when you're aching, anyone who touches the pain feels like a cure, even if they're the infection. Let's talk about Jenna, 32, from Miami. She jumped into a relationship with a man who was passionate, affectionate, spontaneous. He swept her up, but he hated planning, avoided hard conversations, mocked therapy. She, on the other hand, was deeply introspective, future-focused, ready for a grounded life. Within 3 months, the cracks showed. But she stayed. Why? Because he makes me feel something I haven't felt in years. The problem is, feelings lie. Especially when you're lonely. Psychologically, this is called emotional urgency. a state where unhealed attachment wounds create a desperate need for connection, even at the cost of your values. In that state, red flags look like challenges. Opposing goals look like balance. You convince yourself that love is always hard, instead of asking, is this the kind of hard that builds us or breaks me? Another trap, the belief that pain means it's real. You've heard it before, love hurts, or every relationship is messy. So when it does hurt, you normalize it. But Stoicism says, suffering that teaches is necessary. Suffering that repeats is ignorance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, to love only what happens, what was destined, no greater harmony. But if you keep choosing partners who violate your values, you're not loving what is, you're ignoring what is. So what's the fix? First, define your core values. Write them out. Not superficial ones like fun or passion, deep ones like emotional responsibility, honesty, growth, lifestyle direction, communication. Then ask, have I ever brought someone close without checking if they share even half of these? If yes, that's your pattern. Not bad luck. You. Second, pause when you feel too much too fast. Infatuation is not alignment. If you're planning your future with someone after 3 dates, you're in fantasy, not discernment. Ground yourself. Ask boring questions. What do they believe about work, family, conflict, mental health? Their answers matter more than how they make your heart race. Third, take a break from chasing healing through others. If you're not okay alone, you're not ready for a relationship. That's not judgment, that's survival. Because the most dangerous thing is choosing from an unstable emotional foundation. When you're not stable, unstable people feel familiar. When you're unclear people feel exciting. You don't need another mirror. You need a mirror-free space where you see you clearly. Here's a metaphor. Imagine standing on a broken ankle. You know it's fractured, but you keep walking on it, hoping to prove you're fine. And every step with the wrong person makes it worse. What you need is not another crutch. What you need is time off your feet, time to heal, time to stand strong before walking again. So the next time you feel the pull towards someone who lights you up in the moment, but doesn't reflect who you want to become in the long run, ask, is this love or is this just temporary relief? Am I connecting or am I self-soothing with skin and hope? Choose the long game. Choose the one who reflects your future, not just your need to escape the present. When you're truly okay with yourself, your standards will no longer be based on who fills the silence, but who can meet you in the quiet with something real. Conclusion: most people don't ruin their lives by choosing bad people. They ruin their lives by choosing based on how they feel in a moment, lonely, hopeful, infatuated, and then building long-term bonds on short-term emotion. They chase excitement instead of alignment. They pick beauty over integrity, attention over intention, charisma over character. And then they wonder why it always ends in confusion, pain, and silence. But Stoicism teaches a different way. It doesn't say don't love. It says don't choose blindly. Don't base your future on what you feel in a spike of dopamine. Choose based on what you can actually measure. Someone's values, their patterns, their behavior when no one is looking. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask us to avoid emotion. He asked us to anchor it in reason. He wrote, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. That's not denial. That's discipline. Emotional clarity is power. So look at your patterns. Ask yourself, have I been choosing people who align with my vision, or just people who answered my craving? Have I chased love that brings peace, or love that numbs pain temporarily? If the answer hurts, good. That pain is your compass. That pain is trying to point you back to yourself. It's time to reset your standard, not by raising it to be unreachable, but by making it real. Ask harder questions. Be brutally honest about what you need. And most of all, choose people who meet your values, not your fantasies. This is Victory Stoic. If this message stirred something in you, if it exposed a truth you've been avoiding, then like this video. Share it with someone who's tired of choosing pain. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss what matters. In the comments, drop your story or your standard. Say something like, from now on, I choose by values, not emotions, or clarity over chaos, always. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being willing to look inward. Now walk forward, with reason, with self-respect, and with the kind of strength Stoicism was always meant to give you.